Welcome to the thought, emotion, action triangle of mental health. Basically, this is cognitive behavior therapy in action. I like to call this cycle the T cycle. Okay, so you may have heard about CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, and you may have heard about changing thoughts, emotions, and actions. But how does it all work, really? Well, the premise is that our thoughts, emotions, and actions exist together in a triangle. Thoughts lead to emotions, which lead to actions, which in turn lead back to thoughts. The thing that starts all of this going is a trigger. So imagine you're standing on a busy street, and you see a friend on the opposite side sidewalk, and you wave and you shout, "Hey!" But to your surprise, your friend looks right at you and then looks away and keeps on walking. What might your first thought be? Well, it might be something along the lines of this: my friend doesn't like me. Now, according to the triangle, thoughts lead to emotions. So if you thought, my friend doesn't like me, what might you feel? How about sad and rejected? Sound about right? Okay, so if you're feeling sad and rejected, what might you do? Well, there's probably lots of options, but for the sake of brevity, let's just say you'd isolate yourself. Now in this triangle, that action of isolating acts as the new trigger. So if you isolate, what might you think? Well, if you've turned your phone off and you aren't checking your email because you're isolating, chances are no one can get a hold of you. And you might think something like, nobody ever reaches out. If you think that, you might feel alone or angry. And if you're feeling that way, you might do something like send an angry email, which then becomes the new trigger of the cycle, and we're back to thoughts again. You see how this is going? Sending that angry email might have seemed like a good idea when you were feeling alone and angry, but now that you did it, you might think, uh-oh, I should not have done that. Because some part of you, even though you're heading down this negative spiral, is still logical. But with that logical thought about your behavior, you might now feel shame or guilt. And then you might engage in some self-destructive behavior, like self-medicating or binge eating or isolating further, or something else that, in the long run, just isn't good for you. When it's broken down like this, you can see how quickly this becomes a spiral of negativity, and this, I guarantee you, is much, much slower than the speed it actually all happens in your brain. So what to do? Okay, let's start at the beginning again. Triangle. Thought, emotion, action. Now, same story, same busy street, same wave and shout, same non-response, same trigger that leads to that same first thought. But as that thought is careening down towards emotions, we need to catch it, and then we need to question it. And we can do that with a simple T-chart of evidence for the thought and evidence against it. Okay, so let's check. To be totally transparent with you, so you know I'm not trying to trick you, let's come up with a couple reasons first that this thought, my friend doesn't like me, is true. So let's look at the evidence. Okay, there was no wave. It seemed like there was eye contact. Not sure about a third right now, but there probably is one. Okay, now what about evidence against it? Well, definitely it's a busy street, like loud, and lots of stuff happening. I don't actually know what my friend's eyesight is. What about recent interactions? How did they go? If they seemed okay, that could be pretty good evidence against this idea of my friend disliking me. Perfect. Now here's the good news. If there's any evidence against that first thought, then that means it is not a fact. And if it's not a fact, we can head on back to the beginning of this whole cycle, to that first thought, and replace it with a more reasonable, more factual thought. Something that corresponds to the evidence at hand. Now this doesn't need to be the total opposite, like, My friend thinks I'm the most amazing human being on the planet and loves and admires me more than ever. Because that's not what the evidence tells us here, is it? Our brain is too sophisticated to fall for that trick. So let's just be honest with it. Honestly, factually, what's a reasonable thing to think when your friend looks right at you but doesn't wave? How about, that was odd. Which would then lead you to feeling perplexed? Maybe a bit disappointed? Sure, it's not all roses, but it's not devastating like last time. If you're feeling a bit perplexed and disappointed, do you think you might call your friend and see what's up? Essentially, this stops the negative spiral cycle from ever happening, or at least it slows it down to the point where you can probably tune in and notice that you're spiraling and do something about it. For more CBT intervention,
the ways in which we think, feel and behave are all linked. It's helpful to understand how each influences the other. For example, when I think that I can't rely on my partner for support, I might behave in ways that push my partner away and stop them from offering support. With the result that my feelings are affected. I feel unsupported, angry, and probably lonely. These feelings then influence my thoughts. I think I can't rely on my partner, and so I continue to behave in ways that stop my partner from supporting me. And so the circle rolls on, and I become more and more fed up with my relationship, more critical of my partner's attempts to help me, and increasingly hopeless about anything changing. But the good news is that because thoughts, feelings and behaviour are linked, if I want things to change, I can enter that circle at any point, and any change I make is likely to start a series of changes. So if I change my behaviour by letting my partner help me, I'm likely to feel more supported, and that my needs are being noticed. And this in turn will influence my thoughts. I'm more likely to think that my partner respects me and cares for me. As the circle rolls on, my changed behaviour will show my partner that I'm turning towards them rather than away, and they'll feel needed by me and think that we're getting on better.
I'd like you to close your eyes for a moment and imagine the following scenario. You're walking down the street and you see someone you know on the other side. You smile and wave at them, and they just continue walking without responding at all. How do you feel? Well, the way you feel in this situation is going to depend a lot on your thoughts. If you think, "What's the matter? Why is she ignoring me? Have I done something to upset her?" Then you might start feeling anxious or worried. And if you think, "Why didn't he respond? Doesn't he like me?" Then you might start feeling sad. Or if you start thinking, "What's her problem? That's so rude. What's wrong with her?" Then you'll start feeling angry. Or if you just think, "Oh, I guess he didn't notice me," then you might feel a little disappointed, but you probably won't have a very strong emotional response. The point is, the situation itself doesn't dictate how you feel. The way that you feel depends on the thoughts that you have in response to the situation. This relationship is often described as the ABC model. So first, at A, we have a situation, sometimes referred to as an activating event. And then eventually at C, we end up with a feeling or a consequence. But we're often not aware of the thought or belief at B that links A and C together. And this thought is often referred to as an automatic thought because it arises almost instantly and automatically. And it's this automatic thought that determines the emotion that we feel and how strongly we feel it. So looking at our example again, we start at A with an activating event or situation, and this leads to B, some beliefs or automatic thoughts about the situation. And these beliefs or automatic thoughts lead to a consequence at C, which is a feeling or emotion that we experience in response to the situation at A, as a result of the automatic thought that we have at B. And the automatic thought that we have at any given time can depend on our mood and the way that we're feeling. So if you're already feeling anxious, you're much more likely to have an anxious automatic thought. And if you're sad, to have a sad automatic thought. Because our thoughts and our moods are usually congruent like this. Because there is such a close relationship between our thoughts and our feelings, it can be beneficial to become aware of the thoughts that we're having and to notice how they're affecting our mood. But just as our thoughts become so easy to get caught up in vicious cycles, also we have some sort of anxious thought that makes us feel more anxious. And then because we're feeling anxious, we have more anxious thoughts. And then these anxious thoughts in turn make us feel even more anxious. Or the same sort of pattern can happen with sadness, leading us into a downward spiral that leaves us feeling depressed. And once these cycles get started, they're very difficult to slow down or reverse. But if we're able to notice our thoughts better and how they're affecting our mood, we can often disrupt these cycles before they get started or have the chance to gather a lot of momentum. And we can expand this model of the relationship between our thoughts and feelings to also take into account body sensations and behavior, as all four of these elements act together and influence each other. We start with a situation, which can be either something external, something that you're doing or something that's being done to you, or it can be something internal, a thought, feeling, or body sensation that you're experiencing. And then this situation generates thoughts, feelings, body sensations, and actions in response. And then these thoughts, feelings, and emotions, body sensations, and actions generate more thoughts, feelings, and emotions, body sensations, and actions in relation to each other. Let's look at an example. Suppose you're out with a group of people that you don't know that well, and you're a little shy, and feeling a bit uncomfortable, and you have the thought, I wish I had something interesting to talk about. And then when you have this thought, you start feeling a little bit anxious. And then you do try to say something, but because you're feeling anxious, you stumble over your words a bit. And then you feel embarrassed, and you notice a feeling of tightness in your chest. And then you think, what's wrong with me? I don't even know how to talk to people. And now you feel sad, and you have this feeling of despair in the pit of your stomach. And then you think, there's no point in even trying anymore. And then you excuse yourself and go home. And then you get home and are by yourself, and you start feeling depressed. So you can see how, in this situation, your thoughts, feelings, and emotions, body sensations, and actions are all interacting with each other and influencing one another, and they initiate a downward spiral that's making the situation more and more difficult to deal with, and by the end leaves you feeling depressed. And now for a situation in which a body sensation is the initial trigger, let's look at how panic attacks sometimes start. They often begin when you notice an uncomfortable body sensation in your chest, and you think, am I having a heart attack? And then this thought generates anxiety. And this anxiety leads your heart to start beating faster. And then maybe you start gasping for breath. And then, because you're having trouble breathing, you think, I really am having a heart attack. And you start to panic. And then you start to hyperventilate. And your heart starts beating even faster. And this generates even more panic. And then you think, what if I die? And before you know it, all of these things have interacted together to bring on a full-blown panic attack.